Hello viewers, my name is Dr. V.K. Ajay Kumar, Associate Professor from the Department of ECE uh, in IR Engineering College, and I'm going to deal the subject antennas, waves and propagation. And today we are going to deal two important topics of antennas, waves and propagation. One is beam efficiency, the other one is field zones, and we shall have an introduction on a vector potential. So these are the three topics which we are going to discuss. So here from the module 1 of our syllabus in antennas, waves and propagation, today we are going to deal three important topics of antenna parameters. Those are beam efficiency, field zones and vector potential. And let us start our session with the topic beam efficiency. So here the beam efficiency is related to the concept of beam area. It is related to the concept of beam area. Here, the beam efficiency it is defined as a ratio of main beam area to the total beam area. So the beam efficiency states that the ratio of the beam area of the main beam to the total beam area radiated. So it means that if this is the radiation pattern, let us see on the display. If this is the radiation pattern, this indicates the major lobe. This indicates the major lobe, and these are known as the minor lobes. These are known as the minor lobes or side lobes. So this entire thing we call it as the main beam area. This entire portion of the major lobe and the side lobes, this is known as the total beam area. And this portion we call it as the main beam area. This portion we call it as the main beam area. So here the amount of power radiated in the main beam area to the total beam area, The total beam area is, this is the total power radiated by the antenna. So this is known as the total beam area. And the main beam area is this portion. That means the major lobe area we call it as the main beam area. So here, if we want to calculate the the beam efficiency of the antenna, it is defined as the ratio of the main beam area to the total beam area. Here, the total beam area, it is the combination of major lobe and the minor lobe. So as we have seen in the diagram, this is the major lobe, and these are known as the minor lobes. These are known as the minor lobes. So the major lobes plus minor lobes gives rise to the total beam area. The major beam area to the summation of the major beam area and the minor beam area, we call it as the total beam area. Let us assume that the major lobe area, that is this portion of area, let us indicate by the symbol omega m. And these minor lobe portion or the minor lobe area, we shall indicate as omega small m. And this combination, the summation of the major lobe area and the minor lobe area, let us denote it by the symbol as omega A, which is known as the total beam area. So here, the total beam area, it is nothing but the summation of major lobe area to the minor lobe area, which is denoted by the equation 28. That is omega A is equal to omega m, capital M plus omega m. And moreover here, the beam efficiency is different from the antenna efficiency. So the antenna efficiency, we want to calculate the antenna efficiency. The antenna efficiency, it is the ratio of the input power given to the total power radiated. The antenna efficiency is different to the beam efficiency. If you want to calculate the efficiency of the antenna, so we need to know the input power given to the antenna terminals, and at the same time we need to know the amount of power radiated by the antenna. So if we calculate the ratios of these two, we get the antenna efficiency. That means the power input given to the input terminals of the antenna to the total power radiated by the antenna is known as antenna efficiency. And at the same time, the beam efficiency can be defined as the ratio of the major beam area to the total beam area. So which is denoted by the equation 28. That is omega A is equal to omega capital M plus omega small m. Omega capital M plus omega small m. So if we write this equation as omega m plus omega small m, omega capital M plus omega small m, we shall divide both sides by omega a. We shall divide both sides by omega a. If we divide both sides by omega a, we will get 1 is equal to omega capital M by omega a plus omega M by omega a. So here, this portion that is the ratio of major lobe area to the total beam area, we call it as epsilon m. We are indicated by the symbol epsilon m. And the ratio of the minor lobe area to the total beam area, we indicated as the epsilon small m. So here, omega capital M by omega capital A is denoted as epsilon capital M, and omega small m divided by omega small a capital A is equal to epsilon small m. So here we are going to differentiate these two with respect to the total beam area. That means epsilon capital M, it is nothing but the ratio of the major lobe area to the total beam area, and at the same time epsilon small m, it is defined as the ratio of the minor lobe area to the total beam area. So these are denoted by the symbols omega capital M plus omega small m, omega capital M plus omega small m. Here we can also indicate this omega small m by omega a by a new factor which is known as the stray factor. So epsilon m can be also treated as one major loss of the antenna, which we call it as a stray factor. So the losses produced from the antenna, the losses that occurred around the antenna, that losses, all those losses, we call it as by the name stray factor. The stray factor is defined as the ratio of the minor lobe area to the total beam area. The ratio of the minor lobe area to the total beam area. So here omega capital M can be written as omega capital M by omega capital M. So here epsilon small m and epsilon capital M are both different. Epsilon capital M represents the beam efficiency. Epsilon small m represents the stray factor. So this is about the beam efficiency. So beam efficiency is denoted by the symbol omega A. So omega A is defined as the ratio of the major beam area to the total beam area. Right? And let us go to the next topic, that is field zones. So what are these field zones? So here, whenever an antenna radiates, the radiation pattern will vary with respect to the distance, with respect to the distance of propagation, with respect to the distance. That means the radiation pattern the radiation pattern will is inversely proportional to the distance. The radiation pattern is inversely proportional to the distance. That means as the distance increases, the radiation pattern will decrease. As the distance increases, the radiation pattern will decrease. So exactly, we do not know where the radiation pattern is formed. Exactly, we do not know where the radiation pattern of the antenna is found, at what distance the radiation pattern is exactly found, at what distance the radiation pattern is uniform, and at what distance the radiation pattern is maximum. So we need to know, it depends upon where you place the antenna, it depends upon the surface, of the earth, where you exactly locate the antenna, and also it depends upon the radiation pattern, depends upon the atmospheric conditions, and also the radiation pattern depends upon the operating frequency also, and also at the same time the input power given. So all these things are responsible for the formation of radiation pattern in with respect to the distance. So moreover, we are having three types of zones around the antenna. We are having three types of zones. The first one is reactive near field. The second one is radiative near field. And the third one is far field or Fraunhofer region. The first one simply we can call it as near field. The second one is radiating near field. And the third one is far field. So the far field can also be named as Fraunhofer region. So as we have seen in the display, so here an antenna is exactly located at the center of a sphere. Let us assume this is an imaginary sphere. Let us assume this antenna is located exactly at the center of an observation circle. This is an observation circle. So we need to know where the radiation pattern is exactly. If you draw another observation circle, here the first zone. This is the first zone. This first zone is known as the near field. This first zone we call it as the near field. And the second one, this portion around the antenna, we call it as the radiating near field zone. Radiating near field zone. And the third one is it is known as the far field zone. And the third zone we call it as the third field zone. So when we exactly say which area we call it as a near field and which area we call it as a radiating field and which area with respect to the distance from the antenna we call it as a far field, we'll see through some equations. So here, whenever the distance from the antenna, we'll see about the near field. The first one is the near field. So here, whenever if this is an antenna, if the distance is r, and if this r is less than 0.62 into root of L cubed by lambda, then that portion surrounding the antenna, we call it as the reactive near field or the near field. We call it as the reactive near field or the near field. So here, in this portion, this first area, this first zone, we call it as a near field zone, or we can also simply call it as r less than 0.62 into root of L cubed by lambda. So L represents the dimension of the antenna. That means the physical length of the antenna. The physical length of the antenna is represented as L. So if and lambda represents the wavelength. So this wavelength we can identify by means of the equation C is equal to F lambda. So the wavelength can be determined. By means of the operating frequency. So by the equation C is equal to F lambda, we can determine lambda is equal to C by F. So C represents the velocity of the electromagnetic wave, that is equal to the velocity of the light, which is 3 into 10 power 8 meters per second, and F is the applied operating frequency to the antenna. So this is the equation which represents the near field. So this zone we call it as the reactive near zone. So in this zone, what happens? Here the inductance will be more. Here in this area, in the first zone, this is known as the first zone. In the first zone, the inductance is more. As the inductance is more, the radiation pattern is not clear. As the inductance is more in this zone, the radiation pattern is not clear in this zone. That means the radiation pattern that is observed in this zone is non-uniform. That means you will get like this radiation pattern. This is the radiation pattern in the first field, in the near field. The radiation pattern is non-uniform in the first zone, and at the same time, the electric and magnetic fields are also not formed in this zone. The electric and magnetic fields are also not formed in this zone. And E and H fields are out of phase by 90 degrees to each other. So this is non-uniform pattern. A non-uniform radiation pattern is observed in the near field, where E and H fields are not formed, and these E and H fields are out of phase by 90 degrees. So this is, we can also this zone as one of the zone where in the immediate vicinity of the antenna, we have the reactive near field. That means immediately surrounding the antenna, that surrounding zone we call it as the near field zone. Immediately surrounding the antenna, we have a near field. That zone we call it as a reactive near field zone. So here a non-uniform radiation pattern is formed. And E and H fields are also not formed. Let us go to the second one, the radiative field. So when we can say the zone as the radiative near field zone. So as we have observed here in this portion, the first zone, the inductance is more. The inductance portion is more. Hence, E and H fields are not formed and non-uniform. And we see the second one, the radiating near field or the Fresnel region. So if you say this as antenna, this is known as the first zone, near field zone, and this is known as the second field zone, and this is known as the third field zone. And if with respect to the center of the antenna, this distance we call it as an R. And if this portion of R, if the distance R lies between 0.62 into root of L cubed by lambda and 2L square by lambda, then that zone we call it as a radiating near field zone or Fresnel zone. If R lies between 0.62 into root of L cubed by lambda and 2L square by lambda, then that zone we call it as the near field radiating zone. Here In the second zone, the first zone, we have observed there is no radiation pattern. Non-uniform radiation pattern is observed in the first zone. But in the second zone, the radiation pattern will be, the formation of the radiation pattern will be observed. The formation means will be like this. The formation of the radiation pattern is observed in the second zone like this. But in the first zone, it is non-uniform. In the first zone, it is non-uniform. In the second zone, there is a transition in the shape of the radiation pattern. There is a transition in the shape of the radiation pattern can be observed in the second zone. And E and H fields are also formed. E and H fields are also found, but both these fields E and H are not orthogonal to each other. E and H fields are formed in the second zone, but these E and H fields are not orthogonal to each other. Here, this Fresnel zone, this radiating near field zone is also known as the Fresnel region. That means it is a zone between the near field and the far field. It is a zone between the near field and the far field. So this is the three zones, 1 and 2 and 3. It is a zone which we can represent between the near field and the far field. Here the reactive fields do not dominate. That means the inductive fields are very less compared to the first zone. The inductance is very less. The inductance from the antenna and from the surroundings will be very less when compared to the first zone. The radiating fields begin to emerge. The radiating fields will begin to emerge, and the shape of the radiation pattern may vary with the distance. And the shape of the radiation pattern will vary with distance. So here, whether this radiating near field, the formation of the radiating near field depends upon the two values, that is L and lambda. The formation of radiating near field in the second zone, the formation of the second zone depends upon the values of L and lambda. So depending upon the values of L and the wavelength, this field region sometimes it may exist or sometimes may not exist. Sometimes may exist and sometimes may not exist. The third zone is the far field zone or the Fraunhofer zone. We can also call it as a far field or Fraunhofer zone. So this is the zone where exactly the radiation pattern is uniform and a regular shaped radiation pattern is formed in this zone. And here in this zone, the electric fields are electric and the magnetic fields are formed, and at the same time, the electric fields and the magnetic fields are perpendicular to each other. So if this is the first zone, if this is the second zone, and if this is the third zone, you'll see the regular radiation pattern. Like means from this antenna, you will see a regular shaped radiation pattern. A regular shaped radiation pattern in the far field region only. So when we can say the zone as a far field, means the condition is R is greater than 2L square by lambda. So under this condition, we can say that zone can be treated as Fraunhofer zone or far field zone. So R is greater than 2L square by lambda. R is greater than 2L square lambda. This is the condition for Fraunhofer for the occurrence of the Fraunhofer region. So here the radiation pattern is more, the radiation resistance is, the radiation effect is more in this zone. The radiation effect is more in the far field region. It is also known as the radiation field where the radiation pattern is maximum. The far field is dominated by the radiated fields with the E and H fields orthogonal to each other. That means in the far field only the E and H fields are formed uniform and also maximum, and at the same time E and H fields are orthogonal to each other to the direction of propagation as with the plane waves. So here many of the antenna parameters along with the antenna directivity and the radiation pattern of the antenna are considered in this region only. So most of the parameters like gain, directivity, effective length, beam width, beam efficiency. So all these parameters of the antenna we can calculate only in the far field region only, rather than in the first zone and the second zone. All the antenna parameters can be easily calculated in the far field region only. What is the current distribution? Current distribution or the directivity or the maximum radiation intensity can be observed in the far field region only. So this is the basic condition where the far field exists. That means R must be greater than 2L square by lambda. So these are the three different types of field zones surrounding the antenna. surrounding the antenna. One is a near field, radiating field, and also the third one is far field. So these are the three conditions we need to make a note on these field zones. And the next topic which we are going to discuss is the retarded vector potential. The retarded vector potential. So we'll see what is actually the potential, what is the meaning of vector potential, and why we are going for the concept of retarded vector potential in our course antennas, waves and propagation. In our course antennas, waves and propagation. So here, what is the reason for discussing this retarded vector potential? Here, whenever you take an antenna, this antenna radiates some amount of energy. This antenna radiates some amount of energy at point P. This antenna will radiate some amount of electromagnetic waves or the radio waves to a distant point P. As we can know that all these, waves will propagate with the velocity of the light. That means at a distance of 3 into 10 power 8 meters per second. As these charges, these positive and negative charges fluctuate or move back and forth from one side to the other side, radiation will happen. As we are familiar that for a dipole antenna, the positive charge and the negative charge will move back and forth at a faster rate. So when these two charges accelerate at a faster rate, then the radiation will occur. But this current distribution of the electromagnetic waves, all the electromagnetic waves produced by the dipole antenna will not reach to the distant point at the same time. That means if you want to calculate the potential, if you want to calculate the electric field and the magnetic field at a distant point P, so first we need to know the potential at the point P. We need to know the potential at the point P. That means if we want to calculate the electric field and the magnetic field at point P, so we need to find out the potential of E and at the same time the potential of H. That means the potential of E, electric field, and the potential of H, the magnetic field. So whenever we are calculating the potentials of E and H, we need to observe that all the potentials must be taken into consideration. That means all the potentials that are traveling along this path, with a velocity of light must be taken into consideration. That means if we want to calculate the exact potential at some point P, we need to know the potential of the previous point also. That means we want to calculate the potential at some point here. We need to know the potential of the potentials which are reaching to the point P at an earlier time. That means in a small intervals of time also some electromagnetic waves are produced. The potentials of all those electromagnetic waves must be considered and must be done, and the summation of all these potentials gives rise to the electric potential and the magnetic potential at a distance point P. Right? So we know that these electromagnetic waves will not reach to the point P instantaneously. These electromagnetic waves will not reach to the distant point P instantaneously. That means every electromagnetic wave will reach to the distant point P only after some interval of time. So all the time intervals where the electromagnetic waves are reaching to the distant point P has to be considered while calculating the electric field and the magnetic field at the distant point P. So coming to the basics of this electric field and the magnetic field produced by the current element or a small dipole antenna, let us discuss about the current distribution of a charged particle and the moving charged particle and acceleration. What is acceleration? What happens when the charged particle moves from one point to the other point? So as we are familiar from our physics that a charged particle produces an electric field. So we know that a charged particle produces an electric field. And this electric field will exert a force on other charged particles. This electric field exerts a force on other charged particles. And we are having two types of charges. One is positive charges and the negative charges. So these positive charges accelerate in the direction of field and the negative charges accelerate in a direction opposite to the direction of the field. So according to the physics, a charged particle will produce a static electric field. Right? If the particle is stationary. If any positive charge, if any unit positive charge is stationary, it will produce a static electric field. But if the charged particle produces an electric field, this electric field will exert a force on other charged particles, So here the positive charges will move in the direction of the field, and the negative charges will accelerate in the opposite direction to the direction of the field. Here, a moving charged particle produces a magnetic field. So as we already know from the Ampere's law or from the Maxwell's equations, a moving charged particle will produce a magnetic field, and this magnetic field will exert a force on the moving charges. This magnetic field exerts a force on the other moving charges. The force on these charges is always perpendicular to the direction of the velocity, and therefore only changes the direction of velocity and not the speed. So therefore only this moving charged particle will only change the direction of velocity and not the speed. So this is the basic difference between the how the electric field and magnetic fields are produced when the charges move within the conductor. So a charged particle will produce electric field, and a moving charged particle will produce a magnetic field. So this is the basic difference of how the fields are produced, electric fields and magnetic fields are produced. That means if the particle is stationary, if the charged particle is stationary, it will produce an electric field, and this electric field exerts a force on other charged particles. And if this charged particle starts slowly moving, it produces electric field. If this is a conductor, if the current is supplied here, if the current I is supplied for this conductor, the charges start moving from this direction to the other direction. And when these charges are moving, these charged particles are moving, some amount of flux is induced around the conductor. This flux we call it as a magnetic field. The flux that is induced, produced around the circulated around the conductor, we call it as a magnetic field. And this magnetic field will exert a force on the moving charges. This magnetic field will exert a force on the other moving charges. So this is how the electric fields and the magnetic fields are produced. And here the charged particles are accelerated. The charged particles are accelerated. That means they move with a speed of light. They move with the speed of light. That means an accelerating charged particle produces an electromagnetic wave. That means that whenever these positive charges and negative charges move back and forth, that means they are fluctuating from up and down, they will produce an electromagnetic wave. Here the electromagnetic waves are electric and magnetic fields traveling through empty space with the speed of light, c. That means here the radiations produced by a charged conductor will travel with the speed of light, that is 3 into 10 power 8 meters per second. 3 into 10 power 8 meters per second. And here a charged particle oscillating about an equilibrium position is an accelerating charged particle. So a charged particle, it is fluctuating back and forth constantly. It is an accelerating charged particle. It is known as an accelerating charged particle. If its frequency of oscillation, let us take as f, it will produce an electromagnetic wave with the frequency f. If the frequency of oscillation is f, then it produces an electromagnetic wave with the frequency f. That means when the charges are moving back and forth, an electromagnetic wave is produced with some frequency f. The wavelength lambda of this wave is given by c is equal to f lambda. That means we can also calculate the wavelength by the equation c is equal to f lambda. That means the electromagnetic wave produced by an antenna, its lambda value can be found out by the equation c is equal to f lambda. These electromagnetic waves transport energy through space. These electromagnetic waves will transport energy through space. This energy can be delivered to the charged particles a large distance away from the source. That means the energy produced by the radiating element, it reaches to the distance away from the source. It reaches to the distant point, to the infinity away from the source. So as we already know that these radiating fields will consist of electric and magnetic fields. That means these accelerating charges will produce changing electric and magnetic fields. This changing electric field will produce magnetic field, and the changing magnetic fields will produce electric field. So according to the Maxwell's theory, According to the Maxwell's theory, that is, the accelerating charges will produce electric and magnetic fields, and these accelerating electric fields or the changing electric fields will produce the magnetic fields, and the changing magnetic fields will produce the electric fields. So this interplay between the induced electric and magnetic fields leads to the propagating of electromagnetic waves. That means here the electric and magnetic fields are produced, which are produced within the conductor, gives rise to the propagation of electromagnetic waves in one particular direction. Electromagnetic waves can propagate through free space. So these electromagnetic waves will surround the antenna, into the free space. So if we assume, suppose if we take an example, a charge Q is located near the origin, is accelerating, it will produce electromagnetic radiation. It will produce an electromagnetic radiation. So suppose if this is an antenna, if there is a charge Q here, and there is a charge, another charge minus Q here. If this is Q is located with respect to the origin, it produces electromagnetic radiation. At some position R in space and at some time t, the electric field of the electromagnetic wave is produced by the accelerating charge. That means whenever the radiation happens from the conductor, it will be traveling into the free space, not instantly, but it will reach to the distant point after some time. That means the electric field may not reach to the distant point instantaneously, but the electric field and the magnetic fields are produced to a distant point into the space after some time interval. Here the electric field, it is proportional to the charge Q. Here the electric field, it is proportional to the charge Q. That means if the more number of charges are there, the electric field will be more. If the more number of charges, the more amount of supply is given, the more amount of input signal is given to the terminals of the antenna, then more amount of electric field is produced. The bigger the accelerating charge, the bigger is the field. That means the charges are accelerating at a faster rate. If the charges are accelerating at a faster rate, then the field will be very big. So it decreases as the inverse of the distance r. That means the electric field produced by the conductor will decrease as the distance is increased. Which is the distance between the accelerating charge and the position where the field is observed. That means if this is the conductor, as the distance increases, the electric field will be decreased. See here the electric field is maximum. The distance is very less here, R1. And at this distance, the radiation, if you observe the radiation field here, it is very less. And at this distance, the radiation pattern, if you observe here, the radiation is still very less. That means as the distance is increased, as the distance of with respect to the antenna into the free space increases, the electric field produced by the antenna will decrease. So here, but it is not the distance at the time the field is observed, but the distance at some earlier time called the retarded time, when the radiation field was produced. So here, this is the concept of retardation time, where distance has to be taken into consideration. That means the electric fields are going to reach to the distant point P. It depends upon the distance. If you want to calculate the fields produced at a distance point, we need to consider all the fields observed at an earlier time. With respect to the distance produced by the antenna. So we need to consider the retarded time also. So we need to consider the retarded time interval also, where the radiation field was produced. So all the electromagnetic waves travel with the speed of the light, that is c into 3 into 10 power 8 meters per second in free space. So it takes then a time interval of t is equal to del r by c. That means we know that speed is equal to distance by time. Speed is equal to distance by time, and time is equal to distance by speed. So we can also write, we can change the terms, distance as r, speed as c. So here this is the time interval. This is the time interval taken by the electromagnetic wave to reach a distant point. That means we are going to consider the electromagnetic wave is going to reach the distant point P with respect to the velocity and with respect to the distance. That means T is equal to R by C. That means all the radiations which are reaching to a distant point at an earlier time has to be taken into consideration. At an earlier time, that means we need to consider t minus r by c, t1, and t2 minus r by c, and t3 minus r by c. So all the time intervals where the electromagnetics are reaching within the path along the same path to distant point B, those all potentials has to be taken into consideration to if we want to calculate the potential. Now let us see the concept of a retarded vector potential. Let us see the concept of retarded vector potential. Suppose if r is the distance. Suppose if r is the distance between the source and the observation point. Suppose if we take, for example, this is an dipole antenna. Suppose here there is an observation point here. Let us say this as P. Let us consider this as P. And if this is the distance r, if this is the distance r is the distance between this is the source and this is the observation point. Here we need to calculate the potential at this point P. Here the potential at this point P. So here there are two types of potential. One is the electric potential. The other one is the magnetic potential. That means here the fields are two types of fields: electric field and the magnetic field. So as we are having two types of fields, we are going to get the two types of potentials. One is electric scalar potential, depending upon the electric field, which is related to the electric field, and the magnetic potential, which is related to the magnetic potential, which is related to the magnetic field. So we need to calculate the vector magnetic potential and the electric scalar potential at a distance of r. At a distance of r. That means here this E and H depend upon the charge density and the electric current density. That means here this electric field depends upon the charge density. Depends upon the charge density. That means how much amount of current is being given. And the magnetic field, that is the magnetic vector potential, it depends upon the electric current density. It depends upon the electric current density. So here we are going to calculate the electric potential and the vector magnetic potential through some expressions. So here it is necessary to introduce the concept of retardation. That means or the effect of reaching a distant point P from a given element at a distant t due to a current value which was flowing at an earlier time. That means if this is a current element, this is the distance point P. The effect or the radiations reaching to the distant point P is not only due to the current value. It is not only due to the current value, but also due to the values of. That means the effect produced due to the earlier time also we need to consider the values, the effect produced by the not only the current value we need to consider. So we should also consider all the effects produced. That means all the effects produced are reaching to the distant point at an earlier time. So all those points at this point, and at all these points, so we need to calculate the fields. So we need to integrate all these fields to find out the total potential at point P. So here, while dealing with antennas, the finite time of propagation is of great importance. That is, for this reason, the vector magnetic potential A and the scalar electric potential B are known as retarded potentials. That means the potentials which we are going to calculate at the distance point P, we are calling it as retarded potentials. As we know that we are having at the distance point P two types of fields. That means a moving electric charge will produce two types of fields: electric field and the magnetic field. The potentials produced by these electric and magnetic fields, we call it as the retarded potentials. So, what are these retarded potentials, and what are the derivations and expressions in these retarded vector potentials? We will see in the next session. We shall continue for the next session. The same concept, retarded vector potential, right? Let us have a recap of what we have seen and what is the potential here. So here the potential means, so the concept of potential arises from the two basic fields, that is the electric field and the magnetic field. the concept of potential, it depends upon the two types of fields. One is electric field and the magnetic field. Here, a charged particle produces an electric field, and the moving charged particle produces a magnetic field. Right? So, based upon these two fields, the potentials we need to find out. That means the potential at the electric potential and the magnetic potential at a distant point P, we need to find out. So, we can find out these potentials in the form of expressions, by considering some equations like the charge Q. We need to consider the charge Q. We need to consider the current supply given. What is the amount of supply given, and what is the time taken by the signal to reach to the distant point P. And we need to consider the velocity. We need to consider the velocity of the electromagnetic wave, and also we need to consider the current density along the conductor J. And we need to apply some Maxwell's equations. And we are going to apply some Maxwell's equations to find out the electric vector potential and the magnetic vector potential. So the electric vector potential is given by E, and the magnetic vector potential is given by A. Right? So we shall derive some expressions of A and E based upon the Maxwell's equations in the next session. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.